Another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, you guys know I love to take this space right here and give honor to our guests because I feel they're coming with a couple of things that are very expensive. Time, one of the most precious commodity given to mankind. 24 hours a day, every one of us have it. So we cannot argue with the other person about they having more than us. It's how we utilize that time and recognizing the value of it that will say much about you. The other is the journey. The journey housed so much, usually pain, joy, disappointment, highs and lows, but it's beautiful and it makes us who we are today. And we want to welcome Adrian and thank you for coming to sharing both precious commodity here with us at Threads of Enlightenment. Welcome to Threads.
Thank you so much, Ken. It's a true honor to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for coming. Tell the people the way by which you are serving others. How do you reach out and connect to others?
Yeah, so I'm serving in a couple of different ways. My skill set is buying and selling businesses, and I've used that to build a children's education group in the UK called Spectacular Group. Um, we've grown quickly. We're currently sitting at about 20 employees. We just turned 3 years old, and we're educating just under 10,000 under 5 year olds every academic term. Sorry. So that's been a real pleasure to use business in that way, like as a vehicle to be able to contribute at that sort of scale. I've also been on a fairly sort of steep and twists and turns
Mhm.
journey of self discovery and personal development as well. So I find myself in a place where I'm completely out of the day to day of my business, and I spend my time helping others to elevate their own lives and to deal with problems, whether they are sort of addictions, alcohol, to help them get to where they want to go in life, which is all things I've had to overcome to get where I am today.
Yeah, that's usually the case. And I tell people when you find someone to help escort you from where you are into that next space, make sure that they've been through some stuff. If they
Yeah.
haven't gone through some stuff, I'm trying to keep it clean, Adrian, because the kids might be listening to this, but they have to go through some stuff. And when you go through that stuff, you're familiar with the dark places, so that you can be able to assist someone. So what we do usually as our custom is to go back into that first space by which we get a chance to reside for a few years, and that is our family. That unit has a way of depositing, if you will, some stuff into us that will guide us and form you and I for a major part of our life. Introduce us to your family, invite us there so that we can get familiar. How was your family unit?
Yeah, growing up, we had a lovely childhood. My mum and dad, I would probably, well, in terms of their backgrounds, I would say sort of lower middle class. We grew up with a happy household. I have one younger sister. Um, we very much grew up with a work ethic instilled into us by my dad, not sort of in a dominating way, more by he was setting the example that because
Yeah,
he worked so hard.
yeah,
It was more from what we saw. But then on the other side was my mum, who was a stay-at-home mum, who was very much um, she doesn't care what we do with our lives as long as we're happy and as long as we don't I mean, her words were, as long as we're not bums, so as long as we're not just signing up for state aid and for no good reason, like we had to work, but her
yeah.
biggest priority was that we was happy. So the combination of the two, I feel, gave us a really good foundation for living a happy but a working life. Like if we want something,
Yeah.
we have to go and get it.
Yeah, that's some good principles to learn as a young individual, as one is beginning to walk through life, if you will.
Mm.
So, learning those principles are always a good thing. So, if you're moving through your life, Adrian, and you're heading in high school, how were you hanging out with the boys? What type of relationships were you having with the outsiders outside of the family? And also, how were you managing yourself within that, that arena, if you will?
Yeah, so as I was growing up, I had a good circle of social friends. Sorry, a good social excuse me, a good social circle. But as I moved into sort of senior school, which
Hmm.
is how we term it here, I started to become a little bit more of a lone wolf, and my weight escalated quite significantly. So by the time I was 15, I was severely like overweight. I was obese, and that compounded that problem. So I found myself not wanting to connect with people as much as I could have, and arguably should have
Yeah,
in those years. And they were spent very much in a place of self reflection and
yeah,
just trying to figure things out as a sort of 14-year-old, 15-year-old. And I
yeah.
stayed there until just before I turned 16. So I had a good sort of 3 or 4 years in that place. At
What
which
took
point
you
I
there,
came.
Adrian? What was the catalyst? Forgive me for interrupting. Why did you become the lone wolf? Because before that, you said you had a pretty tight social network, if you will. What caused you to become that lone wolf?
It's such a great question because it was a complete 180, and I just felt this. I just remember feeling this strong desire of I wanted to be by myself so I could
Hmm.
like have the headspace, have the bandwidth to try and figure stuff out and to
Yeah.
observe and more a place of contemplation rather than anything else. And it's very hard to do when you're surrounded by others.
Yeah. And by teenagers.
Teenagers, yeah. And I also found myself I didn't have much in common with a lot of my friends as we grew up. When we were younger,
Yeah.
we had loads in
Yeah.
common, climbing trees and all the stuff
Yeah.
that young boys sort of get up to. But as I started to go into my teenage years, I found myself I was I could connect better with people who were far older than me. For
Hmm.
starters, I've always been the same, and I'm still the same now to some degree. Like I tend to
Yeah.
get on much better with my elders, and I respect the experience and the perspectives of elders, and I've just never really shared the desire to always be doing the things that people like my age were doing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. And so, as you were desiring initially to become more introspective and to began to ask the questions, if you will, and it morphed into the sense where you started to physically change in the weight coming on. Um, with this particular choice within this young man, because this is a purposeful choice of wanting to become more and gaining the additional weight that the outsiders, of course, are going to begin to uh, um, rub at you a little wrong. How did you manage yourself there, Adrian? Because that is a tough place for a young individual because he wants to know, he wants to ask questions, but this physical changes are happening. Those outside, of course, are not sensitive to that, and they're going to say things that can begin to damage you, if you will. What was
mm.
those conversation happening, and how did it affect you?
yeah, I mean, I so in terms of how did I manage myself, I very much kept myself to myself. So if I could hide like so many times I wish I could just be the wall rather than in the room.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I just didn't want to be there or to be seen, and I would do anything and go to all lengths to not be seen essentially,
yeah.
and to stuff like that. And with the like when I was engaging with people, because I was quiet, because I didn't put myself out there, I never really invited any I didn't invite too much unwanted criticism. I'm sure stuff
Hmm.
was sort of being said, but it wasn't. You know, I couldn't hear it, so
Yeah, yeah.
that was fine. But I also found I wasn't like the kid everyone picked on. I wasn't really bullied at school. I
Yeah,
always
yeah.
found that people, like even like the bullies, I don't want to say respect because I don't know if that's what it was, but they just like left me alone, and I knew that they
Hmm.
were consciously leaving me alone. I don't know why they did that because
Yeah,
other people they would sort of pick on, but I never had that. They just left me alone really.
yeah. And as you're moving through life and you're heading towards your college days or your, um, why did you pick the field that you did? Where did you go? Did you go into the field or did you want to go work in space? And why did you go there?
So my career has taken many twists and turns,
Yeah,
and as I sort of entered into my latter teenage years, I just I couldn't see myself living a normal life in the sense of, and I'm sort of, uh, I'm generalizing here, but I couldn't see myself going to the office every day, nine to
yeah.
five for the next 40 years. I just couldn't picture that. But I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I tried things and I tried a lot of different things.
Hmm.
And I always had the perspective, even at that age, of if I try something and I didn't like it, why would I keep on doing it? Like
Yeah.
I was on a discovery, and my parents could never understand that. So my path looked like I finished college. I wanted to drop out, but my dad convinced me to see it through for the 2 years. I then joined a bricklaying company as an apprentice
Hmm.
bricklayer. After about 10 months of there, I decided that wasn't for me. I became very depressed during that time. And so I then found myself going to university to study construction management. Again, I couldn't see myself doing that, and I dropped out of that 3 weeks
Yeah.
into the course. But I'd started a business at university, which sort of led me to staying there for a period of 3 years, running this business and building this business as a student, but
Yeah.
not a student.
And what caused you to be depressed for that time period that you were there? What was it? Those that thought patterns or way by which you were moving and acting in your life that made you or caused you to have those that depressive mentality. You remember what it was, Adrian?
Absolutely, it was an identity crisis.
Hmm.
A lot of people talk about like a midlife crisis, but I believe we have identity crises
Yeah.
at various points, and very common for teenagers, people in their early 20s to not know who they are or where they fit in the world, and that was me through and through. Like I sensed I had this huge potential, but
Hmm.
I didn't know how to apply it or where to
Yeah.
apply it, and I didn't really know where to go.
Yeah. The business. How did you see it? How did it enter into you and say, "Let me create this space"? And you were there for several years, as you said. How did that came about?
It came about, so it was. I've always been quite entrepreneurial, and I had started to dabble in internet marketing prior to going to university, and I
Hmm.
kind of knew some very basic stuff, but I got it working for me. And so when we joined, or when I joined university, it was just I just saw an opportunity, and I thought this
Yeah.
could be fun. Like this could be fun, and I'd like to give this a go. And then it just gradually evolved, and I was there for 3 years, and by the end of that I mean it was a business in its own right, even
Yeah.
though I
Yeah.
hadn't really like, yeah, I don't know, I was still in my early 20s. I was still trying to have fun, but and,
Yeah.
like all the stuff that early 20-year-olds do. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It just brings in the money so that you could party. That we've been there.
Well, we used to run the party, so it
I
started off
see. There you go.
as an advertising, like student advertising, just before Facebook. we put up a website and used to get students to like upload all the photos of them out, and then we'd go to
Hmm.
the local companies and say, "Hey, do you want to reach your student market with, you can advertise on our website?" And then that evolved to, by the end of it, we were running the four main student nights in my town in
Wow.
Reading every week. So we were running the
Yeah.
parties, and it was fun.
Yeah, a friend of mine from London, we ran the parties for many years out in
Yeah.
Orlando. So here you are, you're moving through this young man, entrepreneurial mind, seeing what one's ownership and that type of spirit of, that you have as you're moving through life. And you mentioned that you are one that is constantly trying new things. While you were there and you're looking at your future, if you will, what was those thoughts that were moving you forward from that particular space where you're at with school? You got that first gig. What pushed you and where did you go?
Yeah, so I knew I wanted to have a business. I
Yeah,
knew very quickly that I didn't want to continue the student business because I didn't want to be in my 30s or 40s and still living that lifestyle of a 20-year-old.
yeah,
But I felt that there was with my whole like 20s and my career ahead of me, I felt that there was room to go and get some like to develop myself, to develop my
yeah.
skills. So I joined an IT recruitment company purely on the basis of I wanted to learn how to sell to small businesses, and I
Hmm.
quite liked the idea of that environment, and I liked the income earning potential as well. So I joined a local company. I joined as a trainee. I progressed quite quickly, but after 18 months, I just couldn't see that as my
Yeah.
future. I just couldn't. Yeah, it wasn't. It was a stepping stone rather than the home.
No, yeah. What was that thought pattern when you were looking into that and you were saying, you're having this conversation, I can't do this? When you were there, because I've been there, I remember much of my space being in there, going, what am I doing? Where am I going? That type of stuff. Um, what was motivating you, Adrian, and that kept pricking at you um, to not to be stagnant, if you will. I tell people
Mm.
complacency can become one of the biggest enemies and of the self. And when it comes to self growth and all of those type of things, when one becomes complacent, you can become stagnant and stagnate water, as they say. All kinds of bugs are in there. Next thing you know, you're having a piss over life. So here you are, you're moving, and your mind is obviously not settled yet, if you will, and your thoughts as you're looking into your future and you know that this is not where you're going to be. You're squatting, if you will. What direction, what thought patterns were you having? Where were you going, Adrian, when you were there
Mm.
in your mind as far as life?
I remember very clearly, and I mean, I'm 38 years old tomorrow, so I'm 37.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
But I look back on my 20s, and the majority of them were quite dark. So
yeah,
my mindset at the time, when I was, at the end of these 18 months, I was still coming through that depression. I still
yeah.
hadn't kicked that. The whole time I was building the student business, like on the surface, I was having the time of my life. Deep, inside, I was
Hmm.
completely broken. And there were points in there when I was nothing short of a recluse,
Yeah,
still not going out, which is the big contradiction when you're meant to be promoting these
yeah,
student nights and all things.
yeah,
But when I was in the recruitment role, I really I moved through the company, but I was really struggling inside at the same time. And so when I started to think, or at least realize that my future wasn't there, and I was speaking to someone, and someone planted the idea that maybe that wasn't where I was meant to be. And as simple as it sounds, I hadn't considered that. I just sort of
Yeah.
assumed I'd be there. And someone like, well,
Yeah.
maybe that isn't the company for you. Like, oh yeah, like I hadn't really thought of that, but I was still in a heavy place mentally and emotionally. I was still dealing with that depression, still dealing with everything that came with that, and I found myself, certainly picking up from the student days, like excessive drinking, just that
Yeah.
self sabotage, but more so that I didn't like who I was, and so that was the basis I was coming from. But at the same time, I recognised this very strong desire, like a real deep, unshakable desire to have a life of meaning and of purpose. And for me,
Yeah.
that didn't necessarily mean like that couldn't be confined to a job or to a
Yeah.
career. It was about I wanted to contribute. I wanted to live a life worth living, really. But I had absolutely no idea what that looks like.
Yeah.
And so that essentially came together, the depression, which was sort of driving it because I didn't want to feel that way anymore, plus that
Hmm.
desire to live that life of purpose, left to me doing a fairly significant amount of traveling. So I had traveled between my period of leaving college, so like higher education before university in the
Yeah.
UK, and going to my bricklayer apprentice. I had travelled Europe during that time and seen quite a bit of Europe, and I had a great time doing that. So that was like the last bit of like happiness, I guess, before the depression started.
Yeah.
Um, and so I felt that if I went off travelling again, I might be able to get back some of that happiness. So I ended up um, heading to the Southeast Asia,
Hmm.
over to Thailand, and yeah, just like went on a search for myself. Is the only way I can really describe it.
Yeah. When you were traveling and you said you were happy traveling, what was it about traveling that kept you in that space of happiness, if you can put a hand?
Yeah. So I'm going to distinguish this because when I was traveling Europe, the first time I went traveling, I'd never
Hmm.
felt happier in my life.
Yeah.
And I can remember thinking this is going to be one of the happiest times of my life. Like make the most
Yeah.
of it at that time.
Yeah.
It was the freedom. It was the self discovery. It was the discovery of all these new places and peoples and languages
Yeah.
and history. Everything that came with that. I absolutely loved that. When I went traveling like the next time, that was a very different place. I was essentially running away from myself, and I
Yeah.
didn't want to confront those problems that were like inside of me, those challenges. And I felt like going to the other side of the world, somewhere hot, where I've previously loved traveling and exploring all of these
Yeah.
fascinating new cultures, was the answer. And it wasn't, because when I got to Thailand, I basically got a like a wooden sort of like hut cabin, fairly
Yeah.
close to the beach, and I locked myself up. I rarely came out. I just
Wow.
locked myself up, and I don't really know what I was doing in that period. And I would have stayed there had it not been the fact that I wanted to be in Sydney for New Year. That was the only thing that got me moving from that place. Otherwise, I think I'd still be there now, Ken. Um, so yeah, so I was coming at this from a very different place, with complete contrast to the time
Yeah.
before.
Yeah. And you see this, the thread of depression,
Mm.
uh, where it is that companion that is there with you. How did you begin to deal with this companion? Because we all have to, at some point, begin to have a conversation with those things that, for lack of a better word, are demons, the things that most people say run to it and all these terminologies. But in my case, what I did out of my fear and all the different things that I was going through, I remember having conversation. I would sit down and invite them to dinner and have a serious conversation. I would be actually talking to myself and walking myself through, asking the questions as to why are you feeling this way? What is it that you are seeking? And I would really have these deep conversations with this imaginary me across from me. And once we would complete these conversations, it pretty much helped me to begin to grow, if you will. What were the tools that you were bringing into your space, Adrian, to help you to manage? Because
Mm.
that companion, even after you've learned to manage them, are still there walking with you, and from time to time they'll say, "Hey, what's up?" You know.
Okay.
So, what did you bring into your space to help you to manage, if you will?
I love this question. So, um, there's one tool that I bought in, which is my most prized possession in this
Yeah,
world. Like everything else is relatively sort of meaningless, like from a material perspective. But this tool was I started to journal, and
yeah,
so I started journaling. It was September. I was 20 years old, just as I was like I'd moved out of the bricklaying stuff, but I had to find this outlet for how to start and process these emotions, and I found myself like writing pages and pages. I remember going to sit in a coffee shop and people next to me saying, "Oh, what are you studying?" I'm like,
yeah.
"What do you mean? Like, is this your dissertation?" I'm like, "No, this is my journal." Like I just had to do it. So my journal has, and obviously there's like loads of like loads of like the book, like loads of journals, but they have been
Yeah,
with me ever since, and um, it's it's quite sad in a way. You mentioned about my family earlier on. So
yeah.
my mum and dad, after 43 years of being together, are just going through a divorce, and they're moving
Hmm.
out of their like the family home. And over the next couple of weeks, I'm going over to pick up all my stuff from like up in the loft, like his stuff from when I
Yeah,
was a child. But I'm really excited to be picking up the boxes and boxes and boxes of journals from that
yeah,
period, and being able to to actually spend some time going through them, and to kind of see where I was at. But that journal was a lifesaver for me. It was a way of processing emotions, processing
yeah.
thought, particularly when I wasn't really talking to anyone.
Yeah, yeah, it's a powerful tool. It
Mm.
may not seem as if it is. There's a few tools that one can invite into their space that are very simple yet profoundly powerful. Journaling is one of them, meditation is another, yoga practice is another. Those are all of it. And I tell people, all of it is a form of meditation, including journaling. When one journals, it's you become this channel by which you are communicating to self. It is a powerful medicine that you're getting a chance to uh, extricate all of those thoughts that are jumbled, and you're able to put it forward and empty oneself, if you will. And as you're emptying oneself, you are healing in many ways as you're moving those emotions, those words are emotionally charged from you inside onto a page that you can later take a look at as you are about to go back in and see where emotionally you were and certain spaces in your life. And it's a powerful tool. As simple as it is, Adrian, journaling is one of the most powerful tools out there to bring into your space to help you walk through all the pain as well. You know,
Well,
so
journaling has given me a number of things. So it's helped me to process the pain and to process the thoughts. I remember when I was at university and building that student business and being just utterly depressed and not wanting to go out. I remember very early hours in the morning to stay up so late then, very early hours in the morning journaling and coming to this great insight, which was I was like, why don't I just like I've got some family who live in the Caribbean. I was like, why don't I
yeah,
just go out to the Caribbean, learn how to sail a boat, start a little business taking people out on boats and just live an easy, chilled life. And I
yeah,
remember having this insight saying it would be a life wasted. Like there's so much more there. And so I've had a lot of great insights for that. But also I've like the one of the best things, if not the best thing I've got from journaling is that it's developed where I am now, I have such an implicit level of trust with my intuition and my
Yeah,
instincts and that spiritual connection because
yeah,
I've physically seen it. So if
yeah.
I've had a hunch about a specific situation and I write it in my journal, and then 2 months later, like the situation plays out and I go back to it, I'm
Hmm.
like, that hunch was right. And so it's
Yeah,
developed this strength almost where that has allowed me to sort of go in blindly into situations purely following my instincts and has led me
yeah.
to some remarkable places. But it never would have happened had it not been for the journaling.
Yeah, it's one of the most powerful things. There's this, as you're talking about, I remember reading the Bible. There's a part in the Bible that says, write the vision down so that those that read it, including yourself, you know, it will be able to guide you and so forth.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a powerful tool. So here you are, because on the onset you mentioned a powerful um, business that you do and the audience that you speak to, the young ones, and so to go through all of that and then to be guided into there because the theme of your life that was pushing you was that you wanted to be a life of worth to something. I want to do something of value. As you're moving through your writing, your journaling, you're gaining insight, you're becoming more familiar with you, you're learning, and you're becoming more in tune with yourself and your writing. As you're looking now to you and you're looking outside of you, where did all of that begin to guide you? You have the entrepreneurial mind, you're
Mm.
pouring out. What was the call and what was that tug that began to pull you into the arena that you are right now, Adrian? What was it that transitioned to pull you towards that direction?
So when I was traveling, like I said, it was a pretty dark time, very reclusive, and there's only one thing I can really like looking back on it, say that I pulled out of it, which was a very clear insight that for me it wasn't so much about the business. I felt this inherent desire to build. I just wanted to
Hmm.
build, and which made a lot of sense to me, which is why I found myself gravitating towards being a bricklayer and then
Yeah,
going to university to study construction management. And I've been accepted to study architecture, but I felt that wasn't for me, like the length of time needed to qualify. And then with the business, like I just wanted to build, and again, it was coming from that insight of
yeah,
I want to build, I want it to be in the form of a business because I was fascinated with how business could be used for social purposes, not
yeah,
just for making a profit. And so, with those sort of two insights, I came back to the UK and I just started. Like as soon as I had that insight, I didn't waste any time. I think I came back within a couple of weeks of yeah, okay, this is what I want to do, and that
hmm,
started a new phase of my life. This was going in sort of the mid to latter parts of my 20s, where I like it was still a tough time, but I had moved through quite a bit of this depression by now, and I
yeah,
started to face some of those inner demons. And it was funny because it was still quite early in my awareness, but I was starting to connect that when I was sort of facing and overcoming these inner demons, that was when everything would sort of move forward. Like across my
yeah,
life, everything would move forward. And I've seen that happen again and again and again,
yeah,
actually. Like every time what it sort of led me to an insight of, success is subtraction. It's
yeah,
taking away that stuff that holds you back. And so, yeah, but that's where it started. It was just this strong desire to build, but to build with purpose.
yeah. And that is, there's nothing like finding one's place in the universe. Um,
Mm,
I would tell my children to find your purpose and be purposeful. If your purpose is to be a garbage collector, be the best. Find a
mhm,
way by which you can take it to the next level. And they would look at me, and I told them, I said, because when one does that and you find your purpose, you can be in that space for that 24 hours, for 26 hours, and you don't even know you're there. Everyone else will look into you and go, wow, aren't you tired? And you're looking at them going, what are you talking about? Not recognizing that when you find your purpose, there's strength there, there's your energy, all of those things there. But it's just like any other thing. One has to go and on an excavation of a journey of some sort to find it, to locate it, because we are been programmed to behave a certain way. And what you're feeling and what you are using as your compass is different from what the programmers have been telling you all your life. And so it's going to be a little messy because you are learning about you, you're learning to trust your intuition, you're learning some stuff, and it's never going to be a linear line. Personal growth is never a linear line. If it was, everyone would have gotten there without any fuss. Everyone would jump on the same train, but it would be boring. You wouldn't know who you are anyway. So here you are, you're learning all these different things, and you came back and you knew that it was building, and you began to do that. As you are doing that and begin working on your progress, and I always tell people, when you start that and you do that, you'd be amazed at the people that are coming into your space, because uh, it's been waiting. You have been waiting on you to make the
Mm-hmm.
decision to do something, and once you have made your decision, there are always those that are on the outside that are there to help you, to assist you, but they can't move until you move. And so, talk to us as when you made that move, and then you started seeing those that were coming in to assist you to take it to that next level, if you will.
Mm. I mean, so I came back and started building, yeah, a business, and it started to, and I attracted a few clients, and that was great. I was just offering marketing. I wanted to build a marketing company. I
Mm-hmm.
say Jess, I don't mean that in, yeah. So I started building this business, and I certainly started to attract clients. I attracted some very interesting clients to that, but I started to come up again against hurdles again that were sort of self-imposed and self-inflicted.
Yeah.
So I can see it clearly now looking back, but um, what I was coming up against was I wasn't a very good, like, I call it startup entrepreneur. So
Yeah.
I needed a team. I needed to be in a team to make startups work, which is exactly what happened in the student side of
Mm-hmm.
things. I had loads of friends and students around me who were all quite happy
Yeah.
to pitch in for a free drink or drinks.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the case. That wasn't the case this time, and so I was constantly coming up against the wall because of the like lack of skills from my side, like certain skills. I had some of them,
Yeah.
but I didn't have all of them, and so that led to a period where, yeah, I mean, I had 12 failed startups, just constantly like trying it, thinking that it was the business that was
Yeah.
the issue, but rather myself. And it was only when I made the decision to get into the world of buying businesses, which I'd always wanted to do since I was a teenager. There was no like logic as to why I felt that urge, because I didn't know anyone
Yeah.
else doing it, like buying businesses, turning them around. I didn't know anyone. There wasn't any like famous celebrity CEOs or anything doing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
It's a really weird thing for a teenage boy in England to want to do, but I just felt that desire. And when I did, that was when things started to click into place for me.
Yeah.
And I found that my skills were a lot more applicable. But I really want to emphasize that all of that period, like, so it was in my, as I was turned 30 when I got into the world of like buying businesses, but um, all of that period leading up to that, that was almost like the clearance, because there were so
Yeah.
many issues of like the inner clearance and so many issues
Yeah.
that come up against, like, and I found myself wanting to do these things from a business perspective, but I couldn't because I had this issue I needed to deal with, like a personal issue, and so.
Yeah.
But when certainly when we got to buying businesses, like the right people, the resources just came to me. They almost just fell into my lap.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know on the onset, you had mentioned that just recently, a couple of things began to, some turbulence, if you will, came into your life and began to shape you or reshape you and cause you to become a little more of a deeper, as you say, investigator of yourself. What were some of those things, Adrian, that stepped in, those turbulence that began to walk in and began to reshape your perspective as to who you are and how do you relate to others as a result of this reshaping?
So my so in terms of this year has been the hardest year of my life without
Yeah.
question. We've had a series of major life events happen within the period of like weeks. So my partner Vicky, we were married at the end of July.
Hmm.
So we had a marriage coming up, but unfortunately, a few weeks before we got married, Vicky's mum passed away very unexpectedly. On top
So,
of that, the my latest acquisition started to go sour, and it
hmm.
turned into this ferocious, and it's still like ongoing to some degree. Like it's starting to come to an end now, but into this ferocious, uh, almost unbelievable series of events
Yeah.
in the business where, um, I had. I remember one Friday afternoon in June, had Vicky's brother on the phone to me saying, Vicky needs to get to the hospital now. It's really important. And then my phone also going off with a client who, when I finally called them back straight after that call, spent the next 45 minutes just shouting at me down the phone. And I remember just thinking, is this worth it? Like, what's more,
Yeah.
got to be more
Yeah.
to life than this. Like my
Yeah.
priorities are not there. Then, then the week leading up to my wedding, I found out that my younger sister had breast cancer.
Hmm.
Then we had a honeymoon, which was sort of 3, 4 days, and then coming into August, there was more stuff going on with the business. My parents, who have been, as I mentioned, sort of in the process of getting divorced, like they're moving out of the family home. So there's like 25 years of like history and
History.
stuff there.
Yeah.
So I've had to be quite hands on helping with that as well. And there was a few other things where it was just one thing after the other. But I felt like that whole time there was two things really. The first one was that I felt like I was aware enough, having been through what I've been through my 20s and the
Yeah.
earlier part of my life. I was aware enough to understand what was going on. I
Yeah.
recognised this situation for what it was. I recognised that this was a catalyst and an opportunity to
Yeah.
change and to grow into that next phase and next person of of me, and I didn't know what that was at the beginning, but it became very clear quite quickly into that.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing, and the second thing as well was the with the journey I've been on. I've always had a strong emphasis on personal growth and personal development, and particularly
Yeah.
when I started to face up to those inner demons, and I've always prized and highly valued that. And I found that how I structure myself and how I've used that to essentially create a rock solid foundation in myself. That was what got
Yeah.
me through this period, because I just don't feel I would have had I not had that. And I've all of a sudden found like people like again sort of coming to me saying,
Yeah.
how are you doing? How are you living essentially? How are you growing the business so quick? How are you dealing with all of these situations with a smile on your face, and you're still getting more done? I don't just mean in terms of productivity, but you're still living life at a high level.
Yeah.
And I've sort of come to this place where I've started to share that quite openly, and that's been responded to very well. So yeah, it's
Yeah, that's one of the things that I try to encourage people because darkness is always will come. We have seasons in life.
Mm-hmm.
And the darkness, I tell them, is to make you aware that there is more and not to be, of course, when it comes, one steps back for a little because it comes. I mean, we are human beings. And but once you make your adjustment, you have to recognize the purpose of all of it, um, and you in the purpose of all of it. And when you have that type of perspective, I would always educate people that you are not going to stay any longer that is necessary
Mm-hmm.
because you've recognized the purpose of it all. And once you have that understanding, you'll be able to navigate a little more. You will be less depressed, less hurt, wounded, these different things, terminologies, emotionally wounded, and so forth. But once we recognize it, that it gives us an opportunity for a greater understanding of ourselves, understanding of those out around us, our close ones. And so we need to allow the pain to educate us and not to break us, but to educate us. And one must live, as you mentioned, you became and you were aware. You have to be in that state of awareness, like you had
Mm-hmm.
said, Adrian, that you recognized this place before. And because you recognized this place before, you were able to respond accordingly. And you have to be present in order to that. If you were in a weak state, if you will, it could have caused an overload that could have dislodged you and cause you to go back into that state of depression and stuff like that. But you recognized it. And because you recognized it, you're able to manage yourself better in and through and from it. So, you guys that have been listening to us, all of you, I know many of you may be in that dark place. And Adrian is here talking about how one can escort themselves out. He has some information, he has some knowledge, he has some insights that he can bring to you and offer you so that you can be able to navigate that space, because it is a treacherous terrain, if you will, if you are not aware of it. And so there are landmines there, the depression, um, uh, tremendous pain, all kinds of landmines that someone has gone ahead and are aware of where it is located. And they can ask you the questions that will help you direct you through so you'll be able to come out on the other side. Here you are, your family has been and is going through some changes, and you're about to take that journey to go back home and kind of delves in back into the past to see this young man within the pages. And you mentioned that you're excited to get there to bring that. While you're here, Adrian, and all of this, the whirlwind is happening around you, all of it. It is constantly moving. How are you managing you right
Mm-hmm.
there?
So there has never ever been a more turbulent time in my life, like ever, than
Yeah,
this year has been. But I've equally never felt more grounded and never felt more centered,
yeah,
and that is because of the way I manage myself, and fundamentally that I've come to a level of an awareness now where I prioritize my growth, my personal growth above everything else, because I fully
yeah,
recognize that. And I've been in this place, I've been the opposite, where if I'm completely depleted, I can't be there for my family, I can't be
yeah,
there for the business. So you can't. So above everything else, I prioritize myself and what that looks like. So I get up at 4 a.m. every single day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. I'm up at 4 a.m. and I spend the first 3 hours of the day focused on me. So I read, I meditate, I visualize, and then I exercise, and I have a number of other activities I do. And what I found is that whereas before I was waking up and I may be like a level 3 or level 4 version of myself, but I'm going straight
Yeah.
into dad mode or work mode, then I'm carrying that level 3 or 4 energy throughout the rest of the day. I'm
Yeah.
waking up, albeit earlier, but that time is building me up. So come 7:30 in the morning, I'm coming back from the gym, I'm coming back from my exercise, and I'm like a level 8, a level 9
Yeah.
version of me. And what I'm finding is that I go into I go into my day, I am a significantly better father. I'm a significantly better like entrepreneur, and because I filled myself up so much during those hours every single
Yeah.
day, anything that comes, like I recognize it as a problem, but I've got a heightened sense of clarity and confidence, and I know that, well, a problem's a problem. You just have to, you sort of address it. So it's had a very profound impact. So with all the turbulence going on the outside, because I've invested that time first thing in me, it's given that feeling of centeredness and groundedness to it. So that's essentially the secret sauce, and that's part of this this huge change that's gone on, because as I've had a lot of people approach me over the past sort of 12 months saying, how are you growing a business in this way? Like, you've gone from nothing to a very sizable company when it take people decades to get there. And so I start talking about like buying businesses and stuff like that, and that's fine. Like, that's very sort of teachable. But what I very quickly realized was that that's not it. It was
Yeah.
how it was everything that came before that. It's how I
Yeah.
was handling myself. That was the secret sauce. That's the trick. And it's so applicable to everyone. And it's so simple as well.
Yeah.
It's just so simple.
It it is simple but difficult for many people. And I always give them the
Yeah,
example: if you're on a plane, and the stewardess will tell you if there's anything wrong and the oxygen, drops, put it on you first
exactly.
before you put it to the children. The programming is no, put it on the children first. But how are you going to do that if you can't even breathe, you can't see,
Yep.
you can't, So it is a hard thing to grasp, but it is the right way. One must take care of the self first, as Adrian talked about, his habit with himself. His commitment to self is that he is up at a certain time and he has 3 hours. That's his. And based on his interaction with himself, he is now able and prepared to deal with everything and anyone that comes. Mine is the same. I control my day at my meditation. That is teaching me about energy, boundaries, and all of these things. And when I stand up and I go before others, I have already put up my boundaries. And when their situation arises, it's amazing, Adrian. It seems to show up in slow motion in a way
Hmm.
when it comes, and because it's in a slow motion type of fashion, I am hearing all the different things and able to perceive it and give a clear answer. And many times when I was working and I have my staff, I would tell them, I will get back to you in a minute. And I would go away and go and meditate at Final Corner. And I would begin to meditate about that situation, and I would get the clarity, and I would come back a few minutes later and they were always surprised. How did you figure that out? The answer is always within us, but we have to learn to spend time with ourselves. So here you are. You just gave them, as you said, the secret sauce. And I hope you heard that. And I tell people there are two types of people: the listeners and the ones that hear. I hope you heard what he said, because if you hear it, it will change your life. If you're just listening, you'll miss it, and you need to play it all over again. Adrian, I want to thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. This has been an enlightening conversation. It is one that is very powerful, seeing this young man in his journey with himself, learning who he is, overcoming depression, and all of the other monsters and thoughts that we give birth to in the mind that begin to show up and question who we are. And you overcame them all, and you're standing here in the midst of the cyclone that is happening around you and your family, and you're able to guide others. And I want to thank you so much for coming here at Threads in Enlightenment.
Thank you so much, Ken. I'm truly honoured to be here, and I just love the conversation. It's very enlightening, and yeah, it's just a great honour. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.